This episode of Ham Talk Live is brought to you by Tower Electronics. For connectors, cables, and more, call 920-435-2973 or visit pl-259.com. And by ICOM. Heard it, worked it, logged it. Visit www.icomamerica.com/amateur for more information about ICOM radios.
It's Ham Radio.
Hey, good evening, everyone. It's time for Ham Talk Live. It's episode number 186, Augmented Reality in Contesting, recorded live on Thursday, October 17th, 2019. I'm your host, Neil Rapp, WB9VPG. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Ham Talk Live. Tonight we're joined by Jeri Ellsworth, AI6TK, and Amy Herndon, AI6ZU, and we'll take your calls live in just a few minutes. Last week, Bill Stearns, NE4RD, and Christian Kudnick, K0STH, were here to talk about some of the October special events, specifically Jamboree on the Air, the 100 Watts at a Wire Fallout, and School Club Roundup. So if you missed that show, you can listen anytime at hamtalklive.com or on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube, or you can catch the rebroadcast on WTWW 5085 AM Saturday evenings at about 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We'll get your questions ready to go for Jeri and Amy. We'll be talking about augmented reality tonight and the connection to amateur radio. And if you're listening to us live on Thursday night, you can give us a call after we talk a little bit. We have a short interview. But that telephone number, let me go ahead and give that to you so you can write it down and have it ready to go or type it in. It's 812-NET-HAM-1, 812-638-4261. You can also tweet us. In fact, we've got a couple of tweets already. Our Twitter handle is at Ham Talk Live, so I'll be watching that throughout the night as well. So we hope that you will ask your questions here live with Jeri and Amy right after this word from ICOM America right here on Ham Talk Live. Heard it, worked it, logged it. It's time to get the transceiver that's best suited for your lifestyle. ICOM offers a variety of high-performance and innovative products. Make the most out of contest season with one of these ICOMs today. The IC7610 is the SDR every ham wants. This high-performance SDR has the ability to pick out the faintest of signals, even in the presence of stronger adjacent ones. The IC7610 by ICOM is a direct sampling, software-defined radio that will change the world's definition of an SDR transceiver. It has RF direct sampling, 110 RMDR, independent dual receiver, and dual digicell. The IC7300 is changing the way entry-level HF is designed. This high-performance, innovative HF transceiver with a compact design will far exceed your expectations. With RF direct sampling, 15 discrete bandpass filters, a large 4.3-inch color touchscreen, real-time spectrum scope, and SD memory card slot. And, of course, the IC7851 keeps your competitive contesting edge with faster processors, higher input gain, higher display resolution, and a cleaner signal. ICOM's IC7851 is the pinnacle of HF perfection. It has dual receivers, digital IF filters, memory keyer, digital voice recorder, high-resolution spectrum waterfall display, enhanced PC connectivity, and an SD memory card slot. For more information on ICOM radios, be sure to visit icomamerica.com/amateur.
Who is the most dangerous person in the world? A ham with some wire, a potato gun, and an idea. Ham Talk Live.
Thanks to ICOM America for sponsoring the show. Again tonight, be sure you check out all their great radios and accessories at icomamerica.com/amateur. Tonight, our guests are Jeri Ellsworth, AI6TK. She was born in Georgia and raised in Oregon. And Jeri taught herself to program on a Commodore 64 and never looked back. She entered the computer business and has worked on many projects revolving around computers and computer gaming. Lifehacker named her as a modern-day MacGyver because of her ability to hack a variety of technologies, often with surplus or repurposed pieces. She created her own chip-building production lab at home and has been working on augmented reality in the past few years, and her latest Kickstarter campaign has raised over $1 million to build augmented reality systems at TiltFive. Amy Herndon, AI6ZU, is a prototyping engineer and office manager at TiltFive. Amy refers to herself as the Swiss Army knife on her LinkedIn page. She jumps in and does whatever's needed. She has a wide variety of abilities and is putting those skills to use, with Jeri dealing with everything from scheduling to building prototypes and jigs. She's been a builder for most of her life, and her interest in electronics also brought her into ham radio. And she has a solid collection of HF rigs and likes to build antennas, and it's been great to talk with you both a little bit tonight. And I know things are busy, but thanks for taking time out to talk to us a little bit about your project and how it relates to ham radio. So, Jeri and Amy, welcome to Ham Talk Live.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's an honor.
Well, I have heard all about this Kickstarter campaign for the augmented reality headsets, and that's gone really well. So before we get into the connection with ham radio, give us the latest update on your project.
Well, this project has been going for quite a few years now. I've been working in this space for 7 or 8 years. I started off at a software company in Seattle called Valve Software that hired me to research how to make games more fun and bring everyone from the grandparents all the way down to the grandkids together to play games. Ultimately, they moved into virtual reality, which is a different type of technology that removes you from the world and puts you into this whole synthetic world, which I wasn't a big fan of. And so I started a company to do augmented reality that keeps you in the world but gives you augmentation, gives you 3D elements in the world. And so it's been a lot of work. It's not easy to introduce an emerging piece of technology that has so much potential impact on the world. We honestly believe that in the next 20 years, this type of technology will start to replace our phones, our computers. It'll be our interface to everything in our life. And so the system's just glasses you slip on, and these 3D game characters or 3D objects can just spring out of your table. So talking about an emerging market, you have to get creative about funding activities like this. So we chose to go to Kickstarter, which is a crowdfunding website that allows individuals like your listeners to participate at whatever level they want. So we have some folks that are just pitching in a few dollars that just want to see this technology live. And then we have backing tiers that let people actually get the headset that they can use themselves. And we've been going for 20 days out of a month-long campaign about, I think. Is that right, Amy?
Yeah, around that.
Yeah. And I think we're approaching $1.4 million. We crossed through the break-even point where we could actually build the headsets and probably not go bankrupt. But we made no money.
Yeah, that was within 17 hours.
Wow.
We're at 1.4. We might make a nickel. We make very little money. In hardware, you have to sell a lot of units to just make any money. And so we're still looking for folks to help us out and that are interested in being on the cutting edge of this technology and, help us just keep the lights on in the office and keep food on the employees' tables.
And bring this awesome thing that we've invented out into the world.
Well, I know, we've been talking, you've been getting calls in the middle of the night and not a whole lot of sleep, and it's been quite a ride. So, hopefully, that comes in and you're, like you said, you've got food on the table and you can keep going and keep working on this great project and really appreciate your efforts in getting all of this going, because it's got a lot of promise to it, and really excited to hear about it tonight. Well, at Visalia, you had some very interesting ideas on ways to incorporate this augmented and virtual reality technology into contesting. So let's talk a little bit about bringing these two worlds together. You've got augmented reality and you've got ham radio contesting. How are these going to work together?
Well, I just wanted to mention one thing before we go into that. I just was recalling back to all of my Elmers and ham radio mentors when I was a kid, around 1985 or so. And it was amazing. I lived in this small town where there were very few people that had computers, but all the ham radio operators were on the cutting edge and had computers. And I think that's a really cool thing about ham radio operators. They're always adventurous. They're always trying to be ahead of the curve when it comes to technology and communication. And, this is a piece of technology that's coming, and it's going to open up a lot of possibilities for radio communication. And we're excited about what's possible in the form of augmentation for contesting or just general communications alone. But for at Visalia, I brought a very early prototype, and I put together a simulation of what it might look like if you had a 4-square antenna with 4 receivers, and you did just a little bit of math on the signals that you're receiving on these 4 antennas. And I showed right on the table, you saw a little house. It was in 3D. You could actually reach out and it just looked like you could touch it. Right next to the house, you saw the 4 antennas sticking up right out of the table, just like a miniature version. And all around the antenna, you could see cascading in the signal strength from different signals. What's interesting about augmented reality is because you get that extra depth to it and this extra interaction, you can actually reach in and select things with your hands or with an object. It gives you more information simultaneously. And so on this demo I put together, you could actually see the heading in which the signal was coming and which antenna you would want to select or where you want to point your antenna. It's very hard to actually see that kind of thing on a 2D screen because you could see amplitude poking up out of the waterfall that was coming, cascading in towards the antennas, and you could see the heading in which direction it was coming.
So you can imagine in contesting, if you're wanting to reach a certain part of the world, you could actually take a look at, you could have your transceiver off to the side and you can have your TiltFive mat off to the side, and you could take a look at how your antenna is performing, and you can turn your antenna and you can see how your signal is getting out in 3D, and then actually figure out if you're aimed in the right direction, if you're heading towards that area of the world that you want to pick up. And, you could just imagine it, take it from there. It can make it so much easier to actually see that. When we were talking last night with the folks on Ham Nation, we were saying, you can imagine something like a Google Earth, where you can see the whole kind of globe in front of you. You can spin it with your hand, and you can see how your signal strength is getting out across the globe. And then how neat would that be if the person that you just connected with also had that ability, and you could actually reach in and kind of interact with each other in real time while you're making that connection?
Yeah, so we have the ability to track objects and hands, and we have a magic wand that you can use to select things. And a unique feature of our system is you can actually our system is based on this game board that you open up, and that's where all the images show up. You can actually take your game board sitting on your table, link it up to somebody else's game board across the world, and you have this shared 3D space. So imagine hooking our system up to the spotting networks. You make a contact, then automatically you could see this 3D world pop up, and you could see exactly where they are. It could load up Google Maps with 3D view of the terrain, the location where you're actually.
Yeah, if they have a big tower there, you could actually maybe see their tower, which would be pretty cool. And maybe see the signal strength coming off of their tower as well. That would be pretty interesting.
But then you could take it to another level as well. So once you've made your contact, you could actually link your game boards together and have communication over the internet where you could potentially share 3D models. So our glasses have the ability that you could digitize objects. So I don't know, you get the new ICOM 7610 and you walk around it and you digitize it into 3D, and then you can link up to your new friend you made and send them a 3D model. And you could be like, well, here's where the cat port is on my new hot ICOM rig. And we also, I should clarify, a lot of this is super early. There's got to be clever ham radio programmers that, are going to take on these challenges of making the software tools the Joe Taylors and folks out there. And of course, we're interested in that ourselves, and we're kind of poking it as well. But, we're just talking basically about this is the future, what it could be like. There's a lot of interesting things. So you were talking earlier about you're working with your school and they're having antenna problems. One thing that I started working on, it's not complete yet, is I wanted to pull in NEC antenna simulations and be able to build complex antennas in 3D. So you would use the magic wand to drag in real time, antenna elements and move them around and constantly be calculating the antenna. Gosh, I'm having trouble. Not enough sleep. Radiation patterns as you move elements in real time. And you could just lean in to your table and you look at this miniature version of your antenna and you can actually see how moving these elements is changing. And also you could bring in Google Earth, the terrain map, and you could see how the terrain is going to affect your antenna. And you could set up I know we have high iron content. You could use the magic wand to paint iron on the ground, or I know the roof of my school, it has metal, so I'm going to put aluminum on the top of this. And you can model your house, and you could see how these complex interactions actually work in a very intuitive way that's really hard on a 2D screen, but absolutely trivial on a 3D screen.
Well, it sounds like there's endless possibilities, and it sounds like we've come a long way from playing Gorf on a Commodore 64.
Yep.
And then there's a new, we were just speculating last night about new communication methods. We have slow scan TV, we have fast scan TV. Why don't we have slow scan 3D models? You just send out a 3D model into the ether, and people receive it, and then all the geometry gets recreated on your projection, your game board right there in front of you. So you could send a 3D scan of your ham shack or your new rig or your new antenna design and actually send the 3D models over the airwaves. It could be a very interesting new way to communicate.
Oh, I like it. So how soon do you think this technology is going to be available to start working on these projects, and when do you think that maybe the connection to ham radio and the software to do all of that will happen? What's your idea? What's your guess?
Well, if Jeri has her way, it'll start happening in the next couple months. She's been meaning to play around with her ICOM 7610 and
well, I already hooked it up too.
She had it hooked up and ready to go last week. And,
I had a 3D waterfall hooked up to the 7610, and
nice.
It was really, really nice. And I have all kinds of ideas of stuff that I want to do around that. Like, this is actually something probably very relevant to contesting. So I want to have a 3D waterfall cascading away from me on the table so I can see all the elevation of the amplitude, and I can just get in and kind of see the signals. And what's interesting is you can see Morse code, and you pretty much can read the dots and dashes and spaces in the waterfall. But I also want to record the entire spectrum in time and save like a buffer of, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds into the past. And I want to be able to reach in with my hand and grab the waterfall and drag it backwards and then be able to scrub it back and forth and scroll it really slow. Like, was that a did or a da? Like, let me listen to that a couple times. And I believe that when you start to put those kinds of direct interactions with the raw data that, normally you have to use buttons and knobs and stuff to manipulate, you could actually just reach in, grab the audio, re-listen to it, move it through at different speeds until you pull out that call sign that you missed, and then you can just give it a fling it back to, the current time and
to real time.
And so that could be huge for contesting.
No more busted calls.
Yeah, that's right. Just listen to it over and over again.
So
Wow.
in terms of our hardware, some of our early kits are actually going to start going out in February of next year. Folks can actually start developing for it now if they want to. They don't actually have to have the glasses or our SDK in hand to actually start developing for it. We're actually going to be coming up with some widgets that they can use, and our SDK works with Unity and Unreal Engine. So, whichever kind of game engine somebody's using to do these types of interactions, they can just take the widget package, toss it into their project in Unity and get up and running before they even have glasses.
Yeah, and our main shipment of glasses, to the primary shipment for the less brave souls, like we have it split into two levels. There's like the super brave people that want to be very early and deal with bugs and report bugs to us. And then June, July, and we're moving into August shipments now. We've been filling up all of our shipment slots, is when the little bit more polished version, we're not guaranteeing zero bugs, but something that comes with games, comes with applications, is going to be ready. Now, when do the ham radio applications come? Well, I think it's going to evolve over time, and they're going to start out pretty simple. Certainly I'll take all my experiments with waterfalls and, multiple antenna signal strength and just kind of put it out there into the public domain. But once these are in the hands of clever ham radio operators that want to be cutting edge and explore this, we'll start to see the new things like the FT8 of 3D model, slow scan, whatever.
That's when it's going to get really exciting.
Yeah. What exactly do you anticipate or expect the contesting community to put this technology into use and run with it? What do you think?
People are probably going to get mad at me for saying this, but I think you have.
I didn't mean for
right.
that to be a loaded question there, but I guess
No, I think it's hilarious. I'm relatively new. Amy and I are both relatively new to the ham space, and we come in with all this like piss and vinegar and excitement about it, and we go charging in like, wouldn't it be great with all of this new technology? And of course, there's always a segment of ham radios like, I've had my monochrome screen.
You're going to have to pry those tubes out of my cold, dead hand.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I know there's some of your listeners that are just railing against this, and it's okay.
FT8 is going to kill radio.
Yeah.
It's okay. We're not going to replace contesting. You can still use your paper logs if you want, but I think there's going to open up like a lot of interesting things. There's going to be tools that are going to make contesting more efficient is one thing. And what I'm excited about is I think there's going to be opportunities to have more gamified versions of contesting. Maybe, there's lots of sprints out there, which are really fun. You go do a little sprint and it's super casual. I think that there's going to be more opportunities to have kind of instant contests, maybe even contests that, people that are using this cutting edge technology can just log into a public lobby on the internet, come up with their own rules, broadcast it to the world. A certain number of people will just jump on, and for like an hour in the mid-afternoon, it's slow scan 3D model contest, and whoever can receive the most 3D scans of tulips wins, right? And I think it can be really fun, and combine that with real-time scoring, so you can see how you're doing. Like right there on your table, you could see your ranking just scrolling by. Maybe it's a vertical bar graph, like extending out of the table with all the rest of the contestants. It could be like super exciting and fun and instant feedback. And I mean, Amy and I both have a background in the video game industry. And so we immediately draw like these parallels, and we're like, wow, why do we have to wait a year to find out how we did in that contest? Like, we should know on the minute, like how we're doing.
Yeah, instantaneous real-time scoring.
Yeah, and I think that's coming. And
I think that's also a way to get some of the younger generation more excited about getting involved with ham radio as well.
Definitely. Put kids into our system. You could be showing them the most boring education module about, we have examples of like the intestine, not the most exciting thing in the world, but kids are like, wow.
Yeah.
Combine this with ham radio, you're going to have kids lined up, 20 deep to get on the system and try to use it.
Yeah, and the beauty of it is that you can have any number of people around the board at the same time, and they all get their own view. So you could have a bunch of people staring at that waterfall, or how that antenna is propagating and everything else, and they'll all get to take a look at it.
It worked for me. 1985 or so was probably when I met my first ham radio operators. Went to their ham shack. What did I find? Commodore 64s, IBM XTs hooked up doing slow scan TV, and they planted the seed. It took me 25 years, 30 years to finally get my license, but just because they were so cutting edge and it was so exciting for me, it was ingrained in my brain that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you guys were reading my mind, because I'm sitting here, I work with kids. I work with school clubs, and I write about and talk about ways to get young people involved in ham radio, and contesting is one of those things. And we've looked at, the touchscreen radio, and how, the touchscreen radio interacts better with the young people, because that's the technology they're familiar with. And you're exactly right. I think, getting this more of a gaming type system is going to be friendlier to the young people who are doing those kinds of things already. And we've talked on this show about the live online scoreboard, and how a lot of the college level contests and school contests are using the live scoreboard so that they can see in real time how they're doing in the contest. And I think that's just going to continue to grow and grow. And then you put this augmented reality with it, and it's just, the possibilities are endless.
Yeah, you could imagine like all kinds of ways that you can gamify it even more if you had, say, the 3D globe, and you had to try to stack your multipliers in 3D on the globe, right? So, like, you find a region and you start stacking them in a certain order, and you can visualize, like, well, if I contact someone with the letter A in their call sign first, and then I stack someone with a call sign with the letter Z in it, that adds a more complicated multiplier. And now we have this new dimension where we can start to visualize how all the multipliers stack together, and we can see in just just a glance, like how we're doing stacking multipliers in a certain region. And you don't have to go over to a pen and paper and start adding stuff up. It's just, I look away from the microphone, look over the table, and like, bam, I'm getting all these multipliers in California, and like I'm doing really good because my bar graph is
getting taller and taller.
Yeah, it's like an inch off the table. Like, that's great. And I know if I make it to 2 inches, I mean, we're 3D. Human beings are 3D. We interact 90% of the time in 3D, so bringing these interfaces to radios and computing is just the natural way to go. And I totally agree. Like, gamifying, like kids, like almost there's not a kid out there that doesn't play video games, and they find out how well they did in their online game within a nanosecond. So if we could even get contesting so they could get the feedback within a few minutes, that would be, attractive. And I don't care how much the old timers scold me for saying like they'll never give up their paper logs. Contesting is a preparedness drill, but it's also kind of a game, right? It's just a game that's it feeds that kind of that nerd desire to collect things. You want to collect as many as you can, and that's an inherent desire that they use in games as well. So myself, like I love playing games like Elder Scrolls, Skyrim, and I like to hoard and collect as many things as I can. So. Well, I got to meet the founder of Atari a few years ago, and we became friends. And at one point, he pulled me aside and told me, he's like, there's human nature in video games, and we discovered that at Atari, and that's why we were so successful. It's like, it's human nature. Like, humans like to put things into order. Humans like to destroy things. Humans like to
collect things.
And so if you put a little psychology into ham radio, it could really attract a lot of people because it'll just make it that much more fun.
I totally agree. Well, this is so exciting that we're way over time, so we're going to take a break.
Sorry.
and we'll come back and we'll collect some more points and we'll blow up some asteroids and play a little Missile Command or something when we come back. Right after this word from Tower Electronics, right here on Ham Talk Live.
Hey, honey, have you seen the PL259s anywhere?
No, I haven't. Come on, kids. Let's go.
There's just one place to go for all of your connector needs.
Tower Electronics.
Tower Electronics.
Tower Electronics.
A giant warehouse of connectors and adapters for every occasion. Thousands to choose from in every shape, size, and color. And they have antennas, soldering supplies, cables, meters, and more. Where do you go if you want to buy a connector at a fraction of retail cost?
Tower Electronics.
Tower Electronics.
Tower Electronics.
And this weekend only, take advantage of our special liquidation sale. Buy 9 solder-type PL259s, get the 10th one for just 1 penny. They make great Christmas presents. And what better way to say I love you than with the gift of a PL259?
Tower Electronics.
Tower Electronics.
Tower Electronics.
Hi, I'm Scott Cole, KB9AMM, president of Tower Electronics. I like the company so much that I bought it.
Tower Electronics, coming to a Hamfest near you, or online at pl-259.com. And we're in the yellow pages under Amateur Radio Connectors.
My, wherever did you get that lovely PL259?
Tower Electronics, pl-259.com, or call 920-435-2973.
Do we sell PL259 connectors?
Join the conversation. Give us a call at 812-NET-HAM1. That's 812-638-4261. Now, here's more Ham Talk Live.
Oh, yeah. You're talking ham radio, baby. You're listening to Ham Talk Live with Neil Rapp.
Tower Electronics will be at Greenville, Tennessee this weekend, October 19th, the Hamfest there. November 2nd and 3rd in Lawrenceville, Georgia. November 8th and 9th, Montgomery, Alabama. But you can visit them anytime you like at pl-259.com. And Ham Talk Live, you can listen anytime you like at hamtalklive.com, or we're on the air live every Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And be sure to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And it's time for your phone calls and your tweets right now. So if you have a question for Jeri and Amy, give us a call at 812-638-4261. 812-638-4261. That spells out 812-NET-HAM1. Or you can tweet us at Ham Talk Live. And if you're listening to us on WTWW or on the podcast edition, we're not here because it's Thursday and we haven't figured out time travel yet, so we can't go back and call. All right, well, we're going to talk a little bit about the home chip building lab. But first, we did have a tweet earlier, so I want to scroll back here and talk about that. And Armani here, KF5TYU, had a question and also wanted to give a shout out to the Texas A&M Amateur Radio Club, W5AC. So we'll slip that in there. But Armani wants to know, have you already used TiltFive with software-defined radio, or how could that option be made available? Well, you've already had it on the 7610, right?
Correct. There's quite a few ways, if you're a programmer and if you are good at that, you can use these game engines. And so it's kind of unfortunate they're called game engines these days because so many people use them for professional applications as well. But these game engines allow you to work in 3D in a very easy way where you can put graphics into this virtual world and you can just place it with pure measurements. So, for instance, when I did the waterfall experiment, I just instantiated 3D objects that were slowly moving away from me in this 3D world. And then the way our headset works is we have this really easy plug-in that you hook to the game engine. And as soon as you put that into the game engine, the 3D graphics just shows up on the table and you can see it in real time. And so there's a lot of things you can do with SDRs. We did a demo piece of software which took air traffic control data, which came off the internet in that case, and then we plotted it in 3D space. So you could see a topographic map of a city, and you could scroll anywhere in the world and see real-time air traffic over the top of the city. And so you could see paths of where the airplane had flown, little lines floating right in front of your nose, and in 3D space you could see the airplanes, and you could walk around the table and look at your city. You could zoom in and you could see the different airplanes. You could use our magic wand to click on the airplanes and get the beacon data off of it, which was really interesting. So imagine you could take your SDR, pull down all that beacon data and do it in real time just from your own antennas. Or trains, for instance, have a lot of beacons on them. You could be tracking trains and then tracking locations on the table and see it in 3D as if, a little, model railroad, but it's actually real trains moving around. As satellites, you could be pulling in all of this 3D data that's coming down from satellites that are mapping the world. It's just kind of endless how you can hook it up to radios. Amy, do you have any thoughts?
That was fantastic. The air traffic control simulation was really, really fun because you could actually see, the elevations of the airplanes as they were moving around in the airspace. And so you could see, when you look at 2D, you can't really tell if two planes look like they're overlapping each other. You can't really tell where they are in relationship to each other. But when you look at it through our glasses, you can actually see, that one's actually flying really low and the other one's flying really high, and you see them in that three-dimensional space above each other.
I think that's a great example of, the efficiency you can have when you bring in the third dimension for computer displays. 2D screens, this air traffic control, like you have two dots on top of each other. Are they colliding into each other and going to explode? Or you have to actually look at these numbers next to them, like, oh, that one's at 1,000, meters up and the other one's 100 meters up. And it's just at a glance, you can know. So this type of technology is going to be transformative way outside of games and way outside of even ham radio. It's like the air traffic control of the future is going to be people sitting with these glasses on, making the world safer because they're not going to confuse, a digit of a number on two dots on a screen.
Yeah. Wow. Well, Troy, W9KVR, has chimed in here and says, crazy thought. The geoscientist in him says, how about how RF is propagating through atmospheric layers or meteor scatter?
Yeah. I'm not an expert. Maybe you know more about atmospheric readings, but I know there's all kinds of beacons that they send out to try to measure propagation, and their satellites looking down at the atmosphere. You could imagine combining all that data, a lot of it's readily available, combining that together to help predict how various propagation's going to happen. Solar, like Tamitha Skov, could probably help us.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then aggregate all this data together, and you could have a propagation predictor that's really intuitive to look at. It's like, oh, there's an aurora event happening. I'm going to point my antenna north, and I'm going to try to do aurora skip, right? So I think there's a lot of opportunity. Hard to see on a 2D screen and understand all that data, but you start putting all these layers, stacked on top of each other, and you just kind of peer in and look at it. It's like, oh, well, tropospheric ducting. Like there's this use weather satellites. Like, oh, there's these atmospheric, things going on that would be good for tropospheric ducting. So let's give it a try, and gives you more opportunity to have fun and talk, and gives you more opportunity to have people on the other side to actually hear you, because if you're all, looking at the same data.
Yeah, and then combine that with the ability to see, how efficiently your antenna, your own antenna is getting out there and being able to aim it in the direction that you need to aim it to be able to do those types of things. Like seeing that in 3D is going to be incredibly helpful. Yeah, we're just starting to see glimmer of this. Like both Amy and I do quite a bit of FT8 and think that's quite fun. And so I think it's Ham Maps that makes or DX Maps. Hooks into the spotting network, plus takes all the data off your FT8 rig and shows you, lines on a flat map of where your signal has been heard. Now imagine combining that into more of a 3D map, and you could have algorithms in your computer to start to calculate, well, most likely you're doing some kind of skip off the atmosphere, and that's why you're only seeing signals, in this region of the United States, and then it's bouncing and then going to another region. Could help you to understand, what's happening with your signal in more real time just through these spotting networks. And maybe it'll encourage people to put more spotting networks up, and we'd have even more data to work with.
Again, endless possibilities here. I think,
of course,
you got some great ideas there too.
I have to mention, I'm talking when I worked at Valve Software, I like to say I got to see 20 years into the future. And we're only 7 years into what I got to see through this brute force stuff we did. So we're talking very aspirational. It's going to take a lot of clever ham radio operators working with these augmented reality systems to make this happen. It's not going to happen on day one, but for you adventurous folks, you can go to our Kickstarter. It's TiltFive on Kickstarter. Just spell it out, and you can be on the bleeding edge of working on this stuff.
Yeah, and we'll kind of recap that again here at the end, and if you've got a few minutes, I don't want to take too much of your time, but we'll go over a little bit here if you can stick around for a little bit.
Oh yeah.
You have us all night.
Oh no, we can't do that. but let's squeeze in a few other things here because, one of the things that I always hear is, well, if she started building chips at home in the garage, she must know what she's doing. So tell us a little bit about how that all went.
Oh, so I worked for many years as a chip designer. And so as a chip designer, you sit in front of a terminal, you type a lot on a keyboard, and you use a mouse every once in a while. And then you send your electronic files off to this chip foundry somewhere in the world, and like this chip comes back to you in a little plastic package, and you never really do anything like with the silicon. So I'm like, I really want to understand how this process works. Like, I want to touch these wafers. And I have a YouTube channel, Jeri Ellsworth, if you look me up on YouTube, where I try to distill down complicated science and do it at home in the garage. So all kinds of optics stuff, laser things. Sometimes I'll do art projects. Mag loop, for the people that are going to call in and ask about the second video on the mag loop. Someday it'll come. You don't need to call in. But this was one of those things. It was a real stretch for me. So I started buying every book I could on semiconductor process and started researching. I started off with fairly modern books where it's like you got to have a class 1 zillion clean room and you have to have millions of dollars of equipment to do it. And then I started looking at books that were much older. I got books from the 70s and the 60s and the 50s, and I got really fascinated. You look at a book from the 60s, it was not clear how integrated circuits were going to come about. There were a lot of crazy ideas that these scientists were working on, and they were doing them pretty much on workbenches with no clean rooms and with really simple gear. And then, very much like how I got into electronics, I went out and I looked for mentors that were experts in the area. So I started talking to some folks that worked at companies like Fairchild and National Semiconductor back in the 60s and 70s, and they took me under their wing and told me a lot about, how the process worked. And then I got on eBay and started buying surplus gear and trying a bunch of things. And I bought wafers off of eBay in various places and started experimenting. It took me 5 years, and I had actually right next to all my gear, I had a mason jar that was completely full of little pieces of silicon where I'd done experiments and none of them had worked. And it actually came up to this one point after hundreds maybe even 1,000 little experiments that one of my mentors is like, just explain to me exactly what you're doing, just in every detail. And so I grow oxide on the wafer, I etch the wafer, I put the diffusion source on it, I pre-dope it, I etch it, I patent, blah, blah, blah. And then I etch all of the oxide off and I put my metal contacts down. And he kind of laughs and he's like, oh, that's such a newbie mistake. Like everyone that back in the day knew you can't have a PN junction exposed on the surface because you have dangling bonds and the electrons will just jump across the PN junction. You need to leave your oxide layer on. And it's like that one little thing. So I immediately went home, did a transistor, left the oxide on, worked perfectly. Well, air quotes perfectly. None of my transistors work perfectly because there's dirt and sodium in them and all kinds of contamination, but it worked. And then I made YouTube videos about it. And then I made a simple little integrated circuit and ring oscillators and fun stuff like that. But yeah, it was at least 5 years of research. And I love projects like that. I did another one like that before transistors came along. There was this magnetic logic, which used just toroids, very much like the chokes that you use, the toroids you use in balance, but with special properties to them. And it was going to be the replacement for vacuum tubes in computers. So I spent years researching this, and I did a video on how magnetic logic works, and that's super satisfying for me.
Wow. Incredible. That's just, it's such a maker-builder thing to do. And you're we're ahead of the game on that. So,
and it helps me in my career. I can't tell you how many times when I'm working on a professional project, even the augmented reality headset, I did much of the optics. I would not be prepared for doing this level of complex optics if I hadn't spent decades building and experimenting and being super curious. And I tie it back to ham radio. That's what ham radio is about. Like, even if it's just making a simple dipole, like having that intuitive feel for how cutting wire and putting it together and having these complex interactions against the ground. Like, even with TiltFive, you're not going to be able to simulate it perfectly. You got to get out there and learn that intuitive feel of, like, I built it, now it doesn't work. Why? And then having those mentors around you and knowing to go find those mentors.
Mentoring is one of the critical things in ham radio, and I think it's really where there's starting to be a real push now. It seems like there's a push in that direction, and I hope that comes through. Well, one other thing I wanted to ask. Oh, go ahead.
I have one thing, if you don't mind, if I throw this in, because I think about this a lot, and almost makes me get teary-eyed when I think about it. So all of my ham radio mentors took all this time in the 80s to teach me electronics, and they encouraged me to get into ham radio. They're all silent keys now. But they don't even know how successful I became, and that they planted, oh God, I am getting teary-eyed. They planted the seed in me to be a mentor and to get into ham radio later.
Yeah.
And I think it's so important for me and everyone else to know that, sometimes it doesn't feel like you're succeeding in mentoring young folks, but you're planting that seed. And someday when you're long gone, pushing up daisies, you're going to make a big impact in their life.
Well, agreed. Well, one last thing that I want to ask, I want to direct this to Amy, because she's the self-proclaimed Swiss Army knife here.
I actually came up with
first of all, how do you keep up with her, and how do you go from answering the phone to building a prototype?
So I have kind of a pretty varied background. I've always been a builder maker myself my entire life. In fact, I think I was using most of my dad's tools when I was a kid, more often than he was, and he'd always get mad at me because he'd come into the garage and wouldn't be able to find his stuff whenever he needed it because it would be off in the corner where I was building something. I ended up going to school and studying sculpture. And then from there, like, what do you do with a BFA when you get out of college? You either go back and get a master's in fine arts, or you end up doing something else. Well, I ended up going back and getting a master's in public administration, and then ended up working for the city of Seattle in arts administration for about 14 years, doing a lot of office logistics and stuff like that related to grants that the office gave out and whatnot. So I had a very long period of time where I was doing that kind of office administration. And I still was building stuff on the side, and ended up meeting the team, Jeri's first company that she started after she left Valve. Ended up meeting that team and falling in love with what they were working on, and ended up following them down to the Bay Area, and eventually ended up working with them and being, I think, the 11th employee that they brought on board. And everything changed at that point because I was brought on board to do stuff that was not office administration type work. I was actually brought on to do calibration of their early glasses. And from there, like being the maker that I am, I started seeing that there was a need to get my hands into things and start helping the engineers with things they needed to build fairly rapidly. And I have that background, so I just started doing that. And eventually that ended up leading to a full-time job with the company. And so for me, I would love to spend most of my days like building stuff. That's what I'm truly passionate about. And then since we're such a small team right now, you kind of have to wear multiple hats. So I've been picking up a lot of office work as well, doing a lot of the logistical coordination for things, for dealing with manufacturers, for taking care of Jeri's schedule, And then I'll, get a request, we need to build something really fast, and then I'll quickly go build something really fast, and then I'll come right back to doing the other stuff. So I'm just kind of all over the place. I'm pretty good at that. And I think it was either Jeri or one of the other folks in the office that gave me the name Swiss Army Knife, and it just sort of stuck.
She's being very modest. Very, very modest. Amy's extremely intelligent and tenacious. She's like the honey badger around the office. Like, you could give her the task of, like, this Chinese manufacturer is having problem with this kind of lamination of the game board. You need to solve it. And she'll go find out, like, the science behind the adhesives and, like, guide them through it and figure out how to communicate with the factory. Truly, a Swiss Army knife is a great analogy for Amy. A honey badger slash...
A honey badger Swiss Army knife.
Yeah. I actually thrive on this type of stuff. I'm very much one of these types of people. I think a lot like Jeri as well. My mind is constantly spinning with ideas, and if I have too much downtime, I start to get incredibly bored. So having a lot to do kind of all at once is sort of how I work the best.
Which is like the perfect DNA for a startup, because startups are not for everyone. It's not your 9-to-5 job. It's sometimes 20 hours a day. Our team is extremely small. We have like 5 people working on the project, it's incredible what we've been able to do, but you've got to constantly hustle because you have to keep the lights on. You got to keep everyone fed. You got to do the promotion. You got to work with the factory. You got to get the logistics in place. You got to write all the software. You got to inspire people. But on the flip side, it's quite a thrill being on the cutting edge of new technology and blazing a new trail into this way that people are going to compute in the future.
Well, you all have spent an hour with us, and we're very grateful that you've done that, and already getting some comments of great show and great information. And so we're really looking forward to seeing this grow and develop and these new things and new ideas and how this is all going to play in and help learning of all kinds. But we're especially looking for the ham radio options here on this show. But before we go, remind us again about the Kickstarter, because you got to keep the lights on and the team feds here. So remind people how they can get involved with the Kickstarter and how much longer you have on that campaign.
So I think we have about 11 days left on the campaign. It's either 10 or 11 days. And people can find us if they go to Kickstarter and they type in TiltFive, both words spelled out, and then look for holographic tabletop gaming. They'll be able to find us. We're lucky enough to be one of the projects that the Kickstarter staff loves, so that kind of pulls us to the top amongst all the mix of everything that's in there. So we should be pretty easy to find in there. We're also on Twitter, and we tweet a lot about the stuff that we're doing with the Kickstarter campaign, and we've been announcing a lot of our new partners on there as well. So people can find us either way.
I think if you just want to see this technology, exist, we're doing something really special, and it's a worthwhile thing to back.
All right. Well, that's how you can help out. Go to Kickstarter and look up TiltFive and check all that out. Okay. Any final comments before we go?
It's been an honor. It's been super
fun. It's been a pleasure.
Fun. Well, it's really been a pleasure to talk to you. And Jeri, I must have passed you like 5 times at Dayton, and I was so busy and you were so busy that I never did have a chance to stop and say hi. So I am now. But hopefully we can catch up in the future. Yeah, there's
Yeah, if
always
you're gonna be
next
at
Dayton. So
Yeah, if you're going to be at Dayton this next year, I think we're both going to try to make it out there again.
And then we're at Pacificon this weekend. So if anyone listening has questions, just look for the redhead and black-haired girl wandering around. We're there's not a lot of women wandering around as much as men, so we should be easy to spot.
Yeah, feel free to come up and chat with us. We love chatting with people.
All right. Well, there you go. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. And we look forward to hearing from you again as this progresses.
Thank you so much for having us on.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that is a wrap for this week's edition of Ham Talk Live. Thanks to my guests, Jeri Ellsworth, AI6TK, and Amy Herndon, AI6ZU, and everybody out there in cyberspace for listening and typing in tonight, and invite you back next Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And for a list of all of our upcoming guests, just go over to hamtalklive.com. And if you like Ham Talk Live, please leave us a review. That helps others find us a little bit faster. So for now, this is Neil Rapp, WB9VPG, saying 7375, and may the good DX be yours.